As technology evolves, so does its power to help us connect. Through social media, through group chats, or even by giving a person the ability to speak.
Yeah, the first time we heard it, it was amazing that it sounded so much like her.
This week on The Race, we're looking at the power of machines and how they are shaping our everyday life. There's been a lot of attention recently on artificial intelligence, and not all of it's positive. You might remember this open letter from earlier this year when some of the biggest names in the AI industry, like Google and OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, said the technology they were working on could one day pose the risk of human extinction. Now that is certainly concerning to think about, but today we're going to show you what can happen when the power of artificial intelligence is harnessed for good, and how it's helping those with ALS have their voice even when they lose their ability to speak.
I gotta do some weeding?
Yeah.
There's a lot of weeds around here, huh?
Butch and Margie Darlington have a way of knowing what each other is thinking.
No.
Other way? Don't get stuck.
49 years of marriage builds a bond that not even a disease like ALS can break.
All right, let's go back in the house. She writes messages and
It's really hard to shut me up.
yeah, it's hard to shut her up.
And you still understand her even without the computer.
I can still understand her, basically, because we're together 24/7, 365.
The Darlingtons keep it lighthearted. It's been roughly 3 years since Margie's diagnosis. Within the last year, she's progressively lost her ability to speak, but not her voice.
Being able to preserve my own voice has been the best way of hanging on to something normal in my life.
What you heard is a synthetic version of Margie's real voice. It's the product of what's called voice banking. Last fall, when Margie still could speak,
I'm using a computer to help me talk.
she recorded 350 generic phrases with the help of a speech pathologist. Those recordings then went into artificial intelligence-powered software that was loaded up into a computer on her wheelchair. What's it like for you where the computer can generate a voice that sounds like you, but they're sentences you've never said before?
My real voice continues to betray me with the progression of this horrible disease. I have an amazing opportunity to hold conversations in a meaningful way and in my original voice.
When asked a question, Margie writes out an answer on this screen using eye tracking technology. ALS has impacted her ability to move her arms, but doctors say the disease often doesn't impact eye movement as much.
Most people who can't understand my babbling will just give up on conversing with me. It can be very frustrating.
Yeah, the first time we heard it, it was amazing that it sounded so much like her. You could tell it was a little bit robotic, but it didn't make any difference. At least it was so much like her, it didn't make a difference.
I've been doing this voice and message banking for 8 years now, and it's really changed dramatically for the better in terms of ease of access and the quality.
I spoke with the speech pathologist who worked with Margie to record her voice, Annie Roach. She works for Bridging Voice, a nonprofit that helps those with diseases like ALS use technology to communicate. She says in the past, people would have to record thousands of sentences to bank their voice. But with AI, it can be as few as a couple hundred. That's all Margie had to do. Annie does admit the technology has a way to go when it comes to sounding natural.
What we're hoping for in the future is the ability to capture more of that stress and intonation and natural, qualities of speech in somebody's banked voice. And so hopefully that is coming down the pipe.
That's what Alec Gervitz is working on through his company, The Voice Keeper. It's one of several companies using AI to help those with ALS speak as themselves. The Voice Keeper is a free app people can download to bank their voice by just speaking into their iPhone.
Sometimes even don't know how to get a good microphone, but the best microphone that you can think of is 50% it's in your pocket, it's your phone. It's a very, very good microphone.
Annie says voice banking doesn't work for everyone. She says if someone doesn't record their voice soon after a diagnosis, it can be too late.
We've been together for a long time, ups and downs, but we've had a good life. So we're here for the duration.
ALS may be a disease that right now has no cure, but Margie says, in her own words and her own voice, that technology like this is a major boost to the spirit of those living with it.
Never, ever give up. You may have ALS, but don't let ALS have you. You are stronger than you think you are, and there is always someone who can help you.
Chris Stewart, Scripps News, Woodstown, New Jersey. The race continues. Next.
It's summertime, which means the fish are jumping, the sun is shining, and in American households across the country, the fingers are scrolling.
In this backyard art studio in Virginia, little hands are hard at work.
There you go.
Mama 4 Laura Shea Lovett says when she exchanged video games for paintbrushes, something happened.
I didn't have to pull teeth. I actually seen them opening up more. And then that developed our bond as parent and child, because when we started doing activities, I got all the information because they were comfortable.
The longtime artist used her kids' love of gaming and social media and turned it into daily art projects like this.
We would do bath bombs and then name it or color it some type of skin from like Roblox or My Little Pony or SpongeBob.
This part's gonna be really easy. You ain't gotta overthink it, you know, shake your shoulders off.
Teaming up with fellow artist Dimitri Nelson, that side project blossomed into an art-filled summer camp for area kids.
It's healing, it's fun, it takes your mind off of things, it's a healthy challenge.
That healing aspect is important. While experts say there are benefits to the online world, especially for kids hoping to find connections with shared identities, a recent Surgeon General advisory warns of ample indicators that social media can be harmful for the mental health of young people. A study of more than 6,000 youth published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that adolescents who spend more than 3 hours per day on social media may be at heightened risk for mental health problems like anxiety and depression.
Being able to remove yourself from these devices allows more time for you to socialize and engage in more human-to-human interaction.
Doctors say it's important for parents to check in, especially during the summer months when social media usage may increase.
The more time a child is in front of a screen, the less time they're interacting with the people around them. So whether that's family members, parents and siblings, or potentially friends and other children in their neighborhood, that is contributing to social isolation, especially if they're doing more of that kind of passive scrolling.
Experts say sometimes to really drive home the point, you gotta get outside, put down the phone, and practice what you preach.
Dads engaging with the art, whatever your family and your teen enjoys, making time for those things can be another way to create spaces where you're sort of replacing the use of technology with some other type of activity.
So the science part of bath bomb is your baking soda and your citric acid.
The parents/artists here say they understand that not everyone can send their kids to camp, but say creative outlets are everywhere.
You can use buttons, you can use strings, you can use pebbles, you could use whatever you have at your disposal to create what your heart and your mind want to create.
Mine looks perfect.
It does.
I asked some of my social media friends, what are you doing to keep your kids busy and active this summer? I got everything from STEM and photography camps to making everyday chores a competition, whatever it takes to keep those minds busy and the bodies active.
The research on children and social media has gotten the attention of lawmakers. In June, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy brought his concerns to Congress, saying certain social media sites should come with a Surgeon General's warning for young people, similar to the warning on a pack of cigarettes. That decision would require congressional approval.
The bottom line is our kids can't afford to wait longer for us to address the youth mental health crisis. We have to expand our efforts to ensure every child has access to high-quality, affordable, culturally competent mental health care. But we also must tackle the root causes.
The race continues. Next.
Hi, my name is Angie and I'm not a realtor, but I live in super affordable Peoria, Illinois, and I think you should live here too.
You've heard of influencers before, but there's nothing quite like this. Angie Ostaszewski is a TikTok influencer who single-handedly says she's recruited more than 300 transplants to her city of Peoria, Illinois. On TikTok, Angie's listings are postings about affordable homes to purchase.
I really like to share. So if something is beneficial for me, I want to share it with other people so they can benefit from it too.
Nestled in between Chicago and St. Louis, Peoria is a small city of about 100,000 people. Here's one of Peoria's appeals. On average, a U.S. home costs around $330,000. That's according to Zillow. In Peoria, it's a third of that cost, roughly around $100,000.
So we were really lucky to buy a house in 2017, and I never thought I'd become a homeowner.
At 26, Ostaszewski bought this home for $33,000. Her mortgage was $314 a month, which is cheaper than renting in some places in the country. Now she owns 3 homes and recruited her siblings to live in the city too. She identifies as queer, Filipina, and Polish, and she wants to break cycles of poverty, particularly for marginalized communities.
I do truly believe that when you bring in folks who have struggled with things in their life, give them resources and lower their financial burden, that they do want to give back to the community.
26-year-old Nick Hayes and his husband lives a few minutes away.
I know the attention wasn't on you for 2 whole minutes.
They're recent Peoria transplants from Portland, Oregon, and ended up living the van life for a while. And just last year, they bought this 113-year-old 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms for $85,000.
Something that I never thought was going to happen. Having a space that is my own and being able to do whatever I want with it is so empowering.
Hayes says when he was a baby, his family lived in a trailer. It was his first home, and now he's able to own property.
I'm able to have plans for the future versus, if you live in an apartment, you're not really going to be there forever, and there's this feeling of temporary all the time, but I'm going to die in this house,
Home ownership is often seen as a path to build intergenerational wealth, but there are racial gaps. According to the U.S. Census, in the first quarter of 2023, on average, 65% of Americans own homes. Only white Americans exceeded that average at 74.4%. APIs, Hispanic, Black, and LGBTQ plus Americans fell below that average. Peoria isn't perfect. It has crime and poverty. Yet both Ostaszewski and Hayes say they feel safe and accepted, and that they could even save money.
When you've been living paycheck to paycheck and all of a sudden you're not, it's like so many problems magically get solved in your life.
Ostaszewski has welcomed so many transplants and shown them around her favorite places in the city, from a unique vintage shop to an LGBTQ bookstore that has been in the city for 8 years. Ostaszewski says it's a safe place to live, especially as a person of color or part of the gay community.
I was really lonely for a lot of my 20s. And when I started to find community in Peoria, people who looked like me, had the same values as me, I just wanted other people to feel like they could belong somewhere too.
You may wonder why other towns similar to Peoria haven't seen the same effect. Youngstown, Ohio is about an hour from both Pittsburgh and Cleveland. A recent search found more than 24 homes with at least 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, going for less than $150,000. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, less than 90 minutes from New Orleans, has almost 50 homes that fit that same criteria. The difference in Peoria is the influencer.
The beauty of that is that everything that is now normal started with a subculture. It started fringe.
Best-selling author Marcus Collins studied viral content and found 5 conditions that are present in things that become popular.
It was the content, that is the idea itself, was built to share. It provided people social currency, it evoked emotion, there was some practical value to sharing it. Also, it was shared by someone with credence, someone we trusted. If my people tell me about it, I'm more inclined to do it because I trust my people. The third was that it's what we call covers. And this idea of thematic iterations, that when the idea is able to be memed, if you will, that is able to be recontextualized based on how we speak, how me and my people talk, I'm more inclined to check it out. The fourth condition is what we call compliments, that there are other people in the market who benefits from your idea winning. It's like, if you are peanut butter, if jelly's having a good year, you're probably gonna have a good year too. And the last condition is this idea of concurrence, as we spoke about before. Nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. Psychology refers to this as social proof. When those 5 conditions are present to some fidelity or another, they increase the likelihood of an idea catching on.
The race continues. Next. There is evidence that the rise of the smartphone led to a decline in face-to-face interaction. Earlier this year, experts told Scripps News that the amount of time spent with friends began to decline in 2014, the first year that more than 50% of Americans owned a smartphone. And it's affecting more than just our friend groups. It's also affecting our dating lives.
From the outside, dating can sound exciting. After all, it's a chance at new love and opportunity. But studies are showing that some people who are using dating apps, they're now finding themselves with more anxiety and depression.
I should do something on my phone and be like.
This is Kelsey Perkins.
Ow, I just hit my knee so hard.
And you can make an argument that the chaos you're seeing is symbolic of something larger than her.
There's gonna be so many weird outtakes, I don't even want to think about it.
Something like her virtual dating life.
How would you say your experience over the last 5 years on dating apps has been?
Absolutely terrible, nauseating, awful.
You've probably heard of some of these apps: Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Grindr, the list goes on. But numbers show people are using them far more than ever before. For example, this is the global revenue for dating apps since 2015, as it's grown from $1.6 billion to nearly $5 billion last year.
I like a variety, we got a professional one, we got a video of me snowboarding, which is like my whole life.
But as more people flock to these apps, more research shows they might have considerable negative side effects.
The studies are interesting on it, and it's not good for you psychologically.
Really?
Lots of depression.
You said that very definitively.
Yeah, it's not.
Steve Carlton is a graduate professor of social work at the University of Denver. And while he acknowledges not everything about these apps is bad, after all, about 1 in 5 relationships today start on them, he says there are some red flags.
If you're someone that sort of struggles with feelings of rejection and feeling left out and not being accepted, these apps can only make those narratives in your head worse, right? Because there is a tremendous amount of rejection and people ghosting you and just not responding.
According to a study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, there's a link between using dating apps and feelings of loneliness, dissatisfaction with life, and feeling excluded from the world. The research points out that it's a paradox, as people have more ways to connect than ever before, yet many of those connections can feel empty, fleeting, and insecure.
Yeah, it gives me anxiety. There's just it's so much work to date these days. Very superficial conversations, hey, how are you? How's your week? Good. What do you do? And it's just such a waste of time.
Now, this isn't the case for everyone. Carlton says some people can get an ego boost from a match.
I have 37 that I can accept or not accept, or I can do messages.
For Kelsey, the apps offer a way to feel desirable and connect with people since she's busy in law school. But those positive emotions can coexist with the negative ones.
I could go on a date right now from a dating app if I wanted. It's just the outcome that never is good. It's just never really worked, because you don't really talk to them for a long amount of time. It's just hey, you want to get a drink? And then they're always usually weird.
It can be both a blessing and a curse. But such is life for those on this rocky road to love.
Thanks for joining us this week from Woodstown, New Jersey. I'm Chris Stewart. Join us next week for The Race.